everyone, welcome to a special episode of A Stitch in Time. For those of you who might be tuning in for the first time, my name is Carol and my Ravelry name is Knits and Pearls. I host a mostly weekly podcast on YouTube where I mostly talk about knitting, but I also like to dabble in other fiber arts, and so sometimes I do some sewing or quilting, a little bit of crochet now and then, some cross stitch, and most recently I've taken up weaving. So last week in my last regular episode, I asked if anyone was interested in taking part in a year-long Makealong that focused on using our stash. And the response was a resounding yes. So let's do it. Let's make 2022 the year of the stash. I thought that I would sit down and record this video outlining how the Makealong will look and what you might expect from it. So I've decided to break it down into two main components. One of the things that I said that I was thinking about doing was creating a personal yarn club by choosing 12 skeins of sock yarn and setting them aside and knitting them one each month. And a few of you were interested in doing that same thing. So I thought, let's make that one part of this Makealong. And so what I did last night, I guess it was, I went through my stash, pulled out a bunch of skeins of sock yarn, narrowed it down to 12, and then I have put them in these just paper lunch bags and put the date on it, the month on it. And so I'm going to knit one of those every month. So I thought we could do that together. So how the personal sock club will work is that it will run for 2 months for each month. So for instance, for January, you will have between January 1st and January 31st to cast on your January yarn. And then you will have until the end of February to complete the pair. And then once a month, at the end of the second month, I will draw a winner from the finished projects for that month. So in this works in progress, it do not count. It has to be cast on sometime during the first month and the pair has to be finished up by the end of the second month. So I will have a dedicated thread each month for the personal sock club. Just going to see if there's anything about it that I haven't mentioned. Nope, I think that covers it. So then, in addition to that, I am going to have a general chatter thread open for the entire year. And in this, you can join together and talk about all of the projects that you are making from stash. And for the purposes of this Makealong, stash means any yarn, fiber, or patterns acquired prior to January 1st, 2022. So I had some people mention that they don't have much of a stash, and I say participate as much as you can, and maybe if you don't have a very big yarn or fiber stash, perhaps you have a lot of patterns or pattern books that you haven't used and would like to get some use out of. So in that case, maybe you will use a pattern that you own and haven't yet used, but maybe you buy a new skein of yarn to make that item with. That would be just fine. What was I going to say? So you can I think I've covered the four basics of what you could do with yarn or fiber. So, obviously, fiber, hello, you'll spin it. And then you might choose to then knit with that spun fiber or crochet or weave with that spun fiber. So the way I look at it, all I can really think of is three ways to use yarn, and maybe I'm missing something really obvious, but basically knitting, crocheting, weaving. If you can think of something else, let me know. I know that I sometimes get these ideas for make-alongs, and then I just certain things just don't occur to me, and so once people start asking questions, I can know what to do with that. So in the case of the general year of the stash projects, WIPs, works in progress, will count. I personally have a number of items that I have begun, and I look forward to picking up again in 2022. And obviously, if they exist now, it means they're in my stash or they were knit from my stash. Uh, so I am going to open up. Oh, and then what I intend to do is each month I am going to draw a winner from that thread, and I am going to draw it from the posts that were made during that month. So for example, for January's winner, I will draw from between January 1st and January 31st. And then for February's winner, posts between February 1st and February 28th or 29th. I'm not sure if it's a leap year or not this year. Uh, and that way, the winner is winning, rather close to when they contributed to the thread, rather than awarding a prize to somebody for a comment they made, awarding someone a prize in November for a comment they made in February. But I don't want to break that thread down into different months because I want to maintain the flow of the conversation. And so I will just go back and, decide, or not decide, but determine where the cutoff is for that month. And I will draw from number, X or number 1, 2, 3 to, 2, 3, 4, whatever the case might be. So I encourage you to chatter, to get to know one another, to show off your projects, and just make it a real nice place to gather. Not every single post has to do with the make along. Feel free to, please don't bring up a bunch of controversial topics. I want it to be a friendly and a nice place for everyone to hang out. So be thoughtful about what you do share, but or what you do talk about, but feel free to veer off topic, and that's okay. And then I'm going to open another thread, which I'm calling in my mind the tally thread. And this one will be a non-chatter thread. It will be one post per person, but you can go back and edit your post as many times as you like throughout the course of the year. And the purpose of this thread is it gives you a place where you can maybe do some planning, and where you might keep track, if that's your thing, of how much you have either knit or used up, or how many patterns you've used. So I visualize it going something like this. So I think to begin with, what I'm going to do is list the projects that I have started that I would like to finish up. And then I plan to keep track of how many projects I finish, how much yardage or meterage of yarn I use and how much the weight of the yarn, because we all know 50 grams can be, 100 yards of worsted weight and 200 yards of fingering weight. So those are the kinds of things I'm planning to keep track of. And what I'm going to do is, let's just say I might have a pair of socks that's 3/4 finished. Uh, what I'm going to do is just count the yardage and the weight of 1/4 of that pair of socks when I finish it, because 3/4 of it was knit in 2021. The thing is that there's no right or wrong way to use this tally thread. It's for your own purpose. Uh, there are no rewards for using up more yarn than anyone else, and there's no, you know, uh, consequences for not using as much yarn or stash or patterns as someone else. It's not a competition, it's just a way of setting a goal for yourself, and maybe that helps drive some decision making of what you work on throughout the year. I personally do not expect to never buy a skein of yarn in 2022, but my goal is to severely limit it and to shop my stash first. Um, and I hadn't really thought about the pattern component, but one viewer mentioned that she had recently done a challenge in which people try to use patterns and pattern books that they already owned, and I thought that would be a great addition to it. I have numerous single patterns and pattern books and magazines that I have not knit the patterns from, and so I think it's a great way to combine using your stash of yarn or fiber with using your pattern stash. Um, Again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's really a matter of you setting your own goals in that respect. So what I do plan to do, though, is at the end of the year, I will draw at least one winner from that tally thread, just because. So that brings us to prizes. So I don't own a business. I don't raise any money from this podcast. So I'm hosting this Makealong, and I am footing the bill of this Makealong. And so I want to keep the cost of running it reasonable. And I also want to make it a simple thing for me to be able to award prizes. So, given that, prizes will comprise of things like patterns that are giftable on Ravelry, because I can very easily award that to somebody at very little expense or trouble to myself. I like to sew project bags, and I've already acquired some new fabric with that in mind. And a project bag is something that's relatively inexpensive for me to make, and more importantly, relatively inexpensive for me to mail to most places. I can lay it out flat in Canada and put it in a 9 by 12 manila envelope, and it goes as letter mail. I believe to the United States, if I fold it in half and make it a little bit smaller, I can again send it for quite a reasonable price. I also expect that I will pick up some things like maybe some stitch markers or some other sorts of knitterly accessories that again I can acquire for a reasonable amount, and also mail for a reasonable amount of money. Having said all that, if there are any makers among you, and by makers I mean knitwear designers, yarn dyers, project bag makers, stitch marker makers, anything of that sort. If you are interested in donating prizes, I welcome them, and I'm happy to promote your company by doing so. I would ask, however, again, in light of keeping things simple and of keeping costs down, I would ask that those prize items be uh, awarded directly to the winners. I just feel like if you send it to me, there's the cost of postage coming my way, and then I again have to fork out postage to get it to someone else. I'd rather see that moved once rather than twice. So if anyone is interested, and I'm going to also extend that to say perhaps there are viewers and participants in this make along that just have things that they would like to pass on to someone else. Obviously, it would be something in, very excellent condition. I don't, I don't think I have to say anything more about that. I'm certainly cool with that too. Again, get in touch with me. The best way is by private message on Ravelry. Down below this video is all my contact info. So I'm Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. And this make-along will be held in the A Stitch in Time podcast Ravelry group. That's the best place for me to host it. I have Instagram. I don't really use it. And for me, Ravelry is the best option. So with that in mind, I will immediately open up a pre-make-along thread in the Ravelry group where you can discuss your plans for the year and also put forth any questions or suggestions. I may not take all of the suggestions, but I'm certainly open to hearing them. I think, as I said, sometimes I just don't think of every every possibility, and so I'm certainly open to feedback and questions. Keep in mind it is the holiday season, and so I may not be able to get back to you, right away. These are busy days, as I'm sure they are for you, so just keep that in mind. And then I will spend the next week or so putting together official threads for the make-along, but I will not open them until January 1st. And again, as things stand right now, we are supposed to be away from home for New Year's. And so they'll probably open sometime either New Year's Eve or sometime New Year's Day. Don't panic if they're not open right away. I'll do my best to do it as soon as I can. And just, use the honor system. If it's something you're supposed to cast on starting January 1st, please don't start it December 30th. I have no way of checking those things, of course, but I trust that you will abide by the spirit of the rules. And speaking of timing, I say wherever it's January, whenever it's January 1st, where you are, that didn't come out very well. There'll be some leeway on my end. So if you live somewhere where it's January 1st before it is where I live, by all means, use your clock. And there will be a little bit of leeway at the end of the monthly challenges to allow people to post their projects by the end of the month their time. I, above all, like make-alongs in my group to be fun, stress-free, full of lots of conversation. I don't like lots of rules and regulations, and I just trust that people will play along in the spirit in which it's offered. Um, and I hope that you will, and I hope that you will join us, and I hope that you will have fun, and I hope that you will shop your stash and find some old friends that desperately need to be worked up. I know when I was looking at doing some gift knitting this last month or so, this is what triggered this thought. Is I was going through my stash and seeing so many beautiful skeins of yarn that have been sorely neglected, and so that's where the inspiration for this Makealong came from. And judging from the response I've received, many of you are in the same boat. So I am really looking forward to a really fun year of knitting up my stash, or knitting up some of my stash, and becoming reacquainted with some old yarny friends. So I think I have said everything I want to in this video. So I hope you will come and play along, and as I say, don't hesitate to reach out to me with any questions or suggestions, and because I want this to be something that's for all of us. So yes, I look forward very much to seeing you seeing you in the Ravelry thread, and I very much look forward to seeing what you're going to make this year. So take care until then, and I will see you in 2022 for the year of the stash.